Natalie, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Beyond the Hashtag.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Do you want to give a little introduction in terms of who you are, what you do and where you do it?
I'm Lucy McMahon. I'm Communications Officer for We Hear You, which is a small Somerset-based charity that provides free counselling and specialist emotional support across 3 counties, so across Somerset, Bath and North East Somerset and Wiltshire, for anyone affected or bereaved by a life-threatening condition.
And that's your dog. And we've got Lucy's dog in the background as well. He's very, very welcome with us. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How long have you been in your role for?
July 2017 I started. So actually very recently I'm Communications Officer for a second charity as well. But
Oh, wow. Okay. Which one's that?
Rice Research Institute for the Care of Older People in Bath. So our CEO at Y, Melissa, she moved on to Rice and she's taken me with her for a day a week. So.
That's right. I know Melissa.
Yeah.
I know Melissa really well. So amazing. Talk to us about some of the work that Y delivers. You touched upon it there in terms of support services, but there's a whole breadth of services that you offer, isn't there?
It's a lot, yeah. So it started very, very small back in 1994. Our founder, Jill Miller, had breast cancer and was really shocked by the lack of emotional support available. She felt like her physical care needs were really well met, but what she really needed was someone to talk to, and she was lucky that she had a friend who was a counsellor who offered her that space. And when she recovered from her treatment, she decided that she needed to provide that for other people. So she just installed a second phone line in her living room, and a counsellor friend and her started taking calls. And at that time, it was just women with breast cancer. So very small, very specific. And the need was so clear right from the beginning that it just grew and grew exponentially from that time. So it went very quickly, became a registered charity a few years later, and it expanded the service to other types of cancer and then to all life-threatening conditions and all genders, and then added children, added school services. It's an unstoppable force, really, the service.
And what's it like working in a communications team for a charity like that?
It's great. I fell into comms from a background in theatre stage management, so I love it.
Very similar here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
When I started at Y, I was comms assistant. I was the first new team member for several years. 5 years later, there are 15 of us. So
wow.
The team has grown and grown as well. So, and I was the first person ever just doing comms. I became comms officer a couple of years later. And now we've got a fundraising comms administrator who helps me out with some of the social media. So it's not a large team, but it's a really exciting thing to be part of, because I suppose the thing about doing comms for something like we do is that there's no hard sell involved in it. You're marketing something that nobody really wants to need, but everybody knows that they might need, and something that people who've had the service feel really passionate about. So you've always got people to tap into who are happy to talk about it. So I don't know that I could do comms in a commercial area.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I will one day and I'll change my mind. But I love that I do comms for something that is asking for money, but for something that's so easy to present to the world.
Absolutely. And I think actually there's something to be noted there for commercial sectors, because when I came out of public sector and started my own company, I actually took with me the understanding and the lessons that actually people on social media wanted a cause to believe in or a community to be part of. And once you build those two things, you're more likely to generate results and you're more likely to generate outcomes. So because you're building trust with people. And actually that's very relevant no matter what sector you're in when it comes to social media, because, you know, even if you're Tesco's or Dove or whoever, you know, just pumping out content that says buy this, buy this, buy this, it's not going to work. So yeah, don't be put back on that. I think your skill set is probably very transferable, whether or not you're working in a charity or working in the commercial sector. I think the same rules apply. But tell me a bit about how you should or do go about crafting content for a charity, because as you say, you do have to generate income, and social media does lend itself to be able to support that. Do you have a specific approach when it comes to fundraising using social?
Broadly speaking, we try to divide our social into sort of 3 areas that are more or less equally weighted. So we have a mixture of fundraising asks and it's like passive content, something that is colour and interest, and like you say, building a community and trust, but that doesn't ask anyone to do anything. And also like shout outs to other organisations, awareness days, things like that. and clinical and case studies, which can be also an ask for money, but doesn't have to be. It can just be about, look at us, we're doing this work, it's important, you might need it one day. And by doing that, I think the passive content almost has the most important role to play, because if you're always asking, I think people feel pushed back in their seat and they unfollow you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're posting things that are of interest, but not posting too much, so that people say, oh, that's quite interesting. And then you earn the right to go in for the big ask and say, actually, the only reason we can do this is because people like you fund us.
Yeah, definitely. And does that storytelling element come into it at any point? So you talked about case studies, but I guess it's about opening up the why of why, isn't it? It's kind of showing like why we need the money.
Exactly that, yeah. So we're lucky that we've got a lot of people who do fundraising for us in the community, which is really colourful. And a lot of those people do that because they've got a personal reason to be grateful to the charity. So the storytelling, in terms of content, we are spoilt for choice. We've got loads of it, and the storytelling comes easily. We are quite a small charity still, though, so geographically quite big, but still quite small. So to bring in the money, social media is particularly important because it's that free platform where you can reach a wider audience.
Definitely. And do you see a lot of fundraising come in? Do you see much impact as a result of those efforts?
Yeah, so we were at Bath Half Marathon yesterday. We had 15 runners, including Sam, who was dressed as a beekeeper with wellies and a hood. And pending verification, he now has the world record for the fastest half marathon runner dressed as a beekeeper.
Brilliant.
So definitely our social media brings people in to do fundraising for us and provides us with really high quality content for our social media.
That's a really great point, because I think a lot of people would determine the success of their social media by physical pounds in the pocket as a result of that individual post, which again is where commercial organisations can go quite wrong. They expect that you to put something out and say, donate, buy, book, and they expect that to drive an instant action of monetary exchange, but actually that's not likely to happen. It's more of a journey, isn't it? And actually, by you saying we've pulled people in to sign up to the Bath Half via social media, that has actually resulted in all the funds that they've gone on to fundraise for themselves.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it is definitely, like you say, we possibly could do more with the data than we do, but as a tiny team, we see that our social media, our audience is growing, and definitely people are engaging with us.
Yeah.
And we always ask those questions, but it's definitely a huge part of what brings people into the Why stable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way to measure success. I think if people start off by expecting, as I said, I had a conversation with a private sector company a few weeks ago who were outsourcing their social and wondering why they weren't getting any sales from a new product, and they're a brand new business and all they're using was organic social media, specifically Instagram. But they were expecting to see sales from the offset, and that just doesn't happen. And it really doesn't happen that often in organic content, and instead you have to see it as a journey, don't you, in terms of building an audience and nurturing them.
Yeah. And I guess from our point of view, we're also wanting to raise awareness of our service, although I have to say that isn't a problem we've ever really had.
Yeah.
So it's we've never had to aggressively market that we run a free counselling service. There are always plenty of people on the waiting list and coming to us. So, but we see it because we run a free service. We're not doing it for commercial gain. So we see that somebody who reads that social media post who didn't know that we offered that service, that's of equal value. And they say, well, that's why I reached out for help. And maybe that person will then run a half marathon, set up a regular donation, do a case study.
And what do you love most about social media in particular when it comes to your role?
I love the colour and variety of it. And like I said, we're really lucky with the quantity of content we have. There's always a lot going on. And sometimes the challenge of that is picking the shiniest things to go in and keeping all of your fundraisers happy, so the person doing a cake sale that might only raise £40 also feels loved, because who knows what they'll do in the future. We have an embarrassment of riches where content is concerned, and learning to balance that. I really love that about it.
Yeah. And do you use social media in a personal capacity?
I used to use it a lot more before I worked in comms. I think I get my dopamine hit from the work accounts now.
Yeah, and then you get home and go, I don't need to look at my phone anymore.
It's like chefs who never cook, isn't it?
Yeah. So what do you dislike about social, if anything?
I think probably the same thing, always on in a way. So, and you have to react to world events. And like a lot of charity comms people, I work part-time, so I have a lot of content scheduled, ready to go. And then, well, a most recent example is that it was Stand Up to Cancer Day on the 9th of September, and we decided overnight that we were going to pull of our content because of the Queen dying. Well, I feel more sorry for Stand Up to Cancer Day, really, than I do for myself, but that need to be alive to it all the time on Saturdays and Sundays as well. And I suppose that, I mean, I think we are safe in terms of the thing we do to an extent, but the possibility of censure if you get it wrong, even charities have fallen foul of that sometimes. And because the social media is global and instant, even if you make a mistake, somebody might screenshot it and your mistake lives forever. And even if you're a tiny charity, it could explode.
Yeah,
so
definitely. We were busily screenshotting posts left, right and centre on my train journey back from London the day after the Queen passed away, of all these small businesses and large, all the fails that they had made with their social media. So it's great for me for content, but really feeling for their comms team. So how do you manage it? Because there's going to be a lot of people listening either today or in the future to the podcast who are just starting out in comms, just starting out on social, or interested in how people manage that balance of serving the beast and making the best of what it can be versus, you know, how to have some detachment, I guess, and boundaries.
I say it as a learned skill rather than something that comes naturally, but planning is all about planning, isn't it, and data. And that is definitely something I've learned along the way. So I'm quite good at spinning a yarn and coming up with something and reasonably appropriate in the way I do it. But I think planning ahead is the way to keep it sane for yourself as well, because there are always going to be like curveballs thrown at you by world events and whatever. So learning what content works for you by going back into your analytics, looking at things that work, looking at when people go from your social media post to your website. And all of that can be done in not too much time. And so we have an annual planner for our social media.
Cool.
It's not all completed in advance, but it means that we start the month with, so we know that it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October and Hospice Care Week last week. So we got some things that are already there. And obviously the fundraising changes year on year, and there's always plenty of it. And so it means that you've got a certain amount in advance, and you can do that 3/3 balance that we do and get it scheduled. The advanced planning is something I have learned the hard way, but that does give me those weekends back.
Oh, good. And what's this 3/3 balance I think you just touched upon?
I was saying about 1/3 of fundraising posts,
Got
a third
you,
of
yeah.
clinic posts, and 1/3 of like colour.
That allows you to be, really planned in advance. Because I'm always having this conversation. When I first started out on my own, I would just write on the fly and go, this post for this client, this post for this client, this post for me. And then like after a couple of years, as the businesses start to grow, I was like, I'm going to start to need to be more planned like I was when I was working in a big comms team. And it really does buy you that time, not only the time to not be online, but the time to think and plan, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also because like a lot of comms people in charities, I do lots of other things as well. So I'm responsible for the whole of comms. So social media, I can afford to be a bit last minute about it if I have to. If I get something in, I can get a post out in 15 minutes. But then I've missed the boat for the newspapers or the radio.
Yeah.
Like that for the annual planner for social media, I actually find really helpful for other aspects of my job, sort of counting back and thinking, well, if I want to post about that this week, I need to have told the papers 2 weeks before. And I need to have got the photos ready and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, perfect. Do you have any like tools of choice that you love to use?
We've got our website analytics, obviously the Google Analytics, which is really handy. We had Google Ads set up for us for free, which is quite fiddly to set up, but charities do get it for free. That is really exciting, how you can direct traffic, and it's improved the way that I manage our website as well, because I've seen how I can tweak things at both ends to move that traffic around our websites. Traffic, particularly to our case study page, our real life stories page, just went through the roof with the paid ads.
Brilliant.
So for scheduling, Later we use, and Meta Business Suite. has changed. We've started to do a lot more in-house because of the tagging is much easier if you're doing it within Meta.
Yeah.
It's a shame that then you have to go and do Twitter separately. But Twitter, having finally done a scheduling tool for their posts, that has made my life better, definitely. So.
Yeah, same here. Same. We're always thinking and looking at different ways that we can, make things a lot easier in-house. And sometimes the tools like Hootsuite and Buffer are great, but sometimes just the regular, it's great that those things exist. I remember when I first started running socials on Facebook pages, there was no scheduling feature at all. So it's like, wow, how far it's all come. Do you use any apps or anything like Canva maybe or anything like that?
I mean, without which, if I think charities, Canva has made the whole landscape change for charities. The ability to create nice looking content is not good for graphic designers, I suppose, but I never feel like I'm taking work off anyone because we were so small when I started. They just weren't making graphics or posters for events. And thanks to Canva, and I actually paid for Canva when we started at Y because I found it so useful. And then it went free for non-profits and they extended the what you get for that. Their updates year on year, I think Canva is the most incredible product. And I heard one of your podcasts before, somebody saying more or less the same thing.
Yeah.
I produce our annual report in Canva. I do graphics for our activities and events. I make posters and flyers in it. It's so good, so flexible.
Nice. We'll put a little link to Canva as well in the show notes if anybody hasn't yet jumped onto Canva.
And there's a Facebook group, Canva for Nonprofits.
Oh, nice.
And that's really easy. So people, if they've got a problem in Canva and they can't solve it, there's a community which is moderated by Canva themselves. So if somebody has found the hack, they will share it, and then that's a really helpful place.
Oh, wonderful. We'll get involved in that for sure. Thanks for the heads up. So apart from planning and trying to have some boundaries in your life around time online, what other tips have you got for people starting out or even progressing on social if they work in a charity?
I suppose don't say anything unless you've got something to say. It's difficult to find the balance between that and feeding the algorithm and not being too quiet for too long. But I suppose I can compare it in a way so I do 4 days a week at Y, and I've just started doing 1 day a week for Rice. And it's really exciting to come to that job 5 years into my time at Y with all the knowledge that I've gained and experience, and apply it to a new organisation, a fresh set of staff, quite a different angle on things, and finding the different tone, all of that. But I've got a day a week. I can only ever do maybe a quarter of what I do at Y if I'm being literal about it. But learning to do less in order to do more in a way. So it's better to post twice a week, but they're really high quality posts.
Yeah.
Than to be bunging out something. It's International Cupcake Day.
Yeah, which is totally irrelevant.
Yes. So, and if the Queen dying showed us nothing, it's that it isn't always about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It isn't always about you. And on that note, Lucy, I think that was a perfect place to wind up this week's podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show. But before we finish, it is time to get on to my favourite part of Beyond the Hashtag. It's the social media fail.
So the one that I wanted to talk about was the Dove campaign, which the black woman using a Dove product, taking off her top and becoming a white woman.
Horrified.
Oof, was the first thing I thought when I saw it. And, pride comes before a fall, but just astonishing to think how many people in a company the size of Dove that must have gone through to get to posting. It's not like me where, if I made a mistake, I would make it without having gone through any checks and balances because I am the comms department. I've got a fundraising comms manager, but in terms of the posting, she lets me get on with it. So if I thought something was a little bit political, I would run it past her. But I mean, that's not the way it works in a big company. How on earth did that happen?
And it wasn't just a run-of-the-mill, as you say, National Cupcake Day, spelling error type thing. It was a planned campaign, which just feels horrific, really. As you say, I can't even believe that not one person saw that and thought that's inappropriate.
Yeah, that's absolutely extraordinary. It blew my mind.
Yeah, so we're going to add a link to the show notes again for anybody who hasn't seen this. But as Lucy was saying, there's two women in the picture, and it basically It kind of alludes to the fact that, I don't even know how to describe this message that they're trying to get across, but a black woman turning into a white woman by using Dove product. I suppose it's eliciting subconsciously that this woman wants to be this way, and or if you want to be this way, then you use Dove.
I don't want to, famous last word. I don't think I'd ever do that.
No, it does make me feel very icky, and I'm glad that we've raised it and that it got spoken about. How would you advise anybody creating a campaign on social media to avoid such a mistake?
I mean, presumably at Dove they had fresh eyes, but it's all about fresh eyes, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, if I have any gut feeling about something, I've got a team I can run it past. Yeah, so just, don't hold it to yourself, share it around.
Yeah, as you said, it's that planning piece as well, isn't it? If you're planning campaigns in advance, getting multiple people involved, asking those questions, then that is the best way you can avoid such a fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lucy, it's been lovely having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Thanks, Lucy.